answering that age-old question: why is the UK's wilderness so barren? Now, when most people imagine wilderness, they picture dense forests, roaming herds, and dramatic predator-prey interactions shaping the land. But across much of the UK, especially in moorland and highland regions, the landscape is open, subdued, and in ecological terms, simplified. To understand why, we need to look back at what was once here and how the land has been used, and what happens when predators disappear from an ecosystem. Long before modern farming and estates had shaped the uplands, the UK's landscapes were more diverse. After the last ice age, much of Britain was gradually covered by woodland, a mosaic of tree species including oak, birch, pine and hazel. Now, these forests were interspersed with wetlands and rivers that moved slowly, clearings created by natural disturbances and the activities of animals. Large herbivores such as cattle, elk, boar and deer moved through these environments, browsing vegetation and shaping plant communities. Now, crucially, these herbivores were kept in check by predators, things like wolves and lynx and even bears in earlier periods, creating a dynamic balance where no single species could dominate the landscape. Over thousands of years, human influence has steadily intensified. Forests have been cleared for agriculture, fuel and settlement, fundamentally altering the structure of the land. As societies came to depend more heavily on pastoral farming, particularly the rearing of sheep, the uplands underwent significant change. What began largely as a means of food production gradually developed into a widespread rural economy, contributing to the wealth during the medieval and Tudor periods. This shift even played a major role in events such as the Highland clearances in Scotland, where vast areas of land were repurposed and many rural communities were displaced. The open moorlands we see today, often assumed to be natural, are in fact the result of sustained human intervention, or lack of it in recent years. Practices such as controlled burning, intensive grazing and drainage have been used to maintain these environments in the way that they are, suppressing the return of trees and encouraging resilient species like grasses and heather. At the same time, native predators were deliberately eradicated. Now, wolves disappeared from England by the 15th century, and from Scotland by the 18th, the lynx had finished and vanished forever. Without predators, herbivore populations, particularly deer, began to grow unchecked. In Scotland's highlands, red deer became especially dominant. In managed landscapes, sheep numbers have also increased, driven by agricultural policy and economic demand. Both deer and sheep exert heavy grazing pressures on the natural landscape, particularly on young trees and shrubs. This stops woodlands from regenerating naturally. Any saplings that begin to grow are quickly eaten, locking the landscape into a treeless state. This is why many iconic trees in fields and open areas lack new growth around them. This essentially prevents the renewal of an aging tree stock. An example of this can be seen with the recently felled sycamore gap tree. This phenomenon, known as overgrazing, is one of the key reasons why large parts of the UK uplands remain open and biologically impoverished compared to what they should be. The absence of predation doesn't just affect herbivore numbers, but it also changes their behaviour. In ecosystems with predators, herbivores must constantly move and remain vigilant, avoiding certain areas where they are more vulnerable. This creates a patchwork of grazing intensities, allowing the vegetation to recover in some places while being consumed in others. Without predators, grazing becomes more uniform and relentless. Animals can remain in one area for extended periods, stripping vegetation down to low levels and preventing structural diversity in plant life. In turn, this affects insects, birds, and other wildlife that depend on varied habitats. Moorland management practices have reinforced this simplified system. In many upland areas, especially those managed for driven grouse shooting, land is regularly burned in controlled patches to encourage fresh heather growth, which red grouse prefer. This process is typically repeated every 10 to 12 years and is called murray-burn. Now, while this creates a kind of habitat, it limits the return of trees and reduces biodiversity of the region overall. Combined with grazing, it maintains a cycle where complex ecosystems struggle to re-establish themselves. Drainage of peatlands in the past has also altered rivers' hydrology, and that reduces the capacity of these landscapes to store water and support diverse plant communities. Interestingly, with the effects of climate change, we are now feeling the effects of more extreme weather, as intense precipitation events result in rapid drainage into tributaries, significantly decreasing lag time and increasing flood risk. The result is a landscape that appears rugged and wild, but is in reality heavily influenced by human activity and missing some key ecological processes. The bare rocks clinging onto hills that people are so enamored with are actually tragedies of soil erosion and a change from our own biodiverse, temperate rainforests. Now, some might argue this management is needed, though compared to ecosystems from where predators are present, the UK's uplands often lacked the layered structure of vegetation, from ground cover to shrubs to mature trees that supports rich biodiversity. Bird species depend on woodland or scrub habitats that are less common, and the overall resilience of the ecosystem is reduced. In recent years, there's been growing discussion about reintroducing lost elements of these ecosystems, including predators. Projects involving the return of species like beavers have already demonstrated how restoring natural processes can transform landscapes, increasing both biodiversity and water management. While the reintroduction of large predators like wolves remains controversial, it highlights the idea of a broader understanding that's coming round to the UK's population. Because ecosystems are shaped by relationships, everything is interdependent. When key players, or animals I suppose, are removed, the effects ripple across the entire environment. We call this a trophic cascade. So the apparent barrenness of the UK's moorlands and highlands is not simply a natural state. It's the outcome of centuries of land use change, sustained grazing by sheep and deer, and critically, the absence of predators that once helped to maintain ecological balance. What we see today is not a history or story of wilderness untouched, but a landscape that has been simplified, one that tells a tale of human influence and the missing pieces that once made it thrive. In other words, an enamoured plagioclimax. Now, if you like this video, please do give it a like. Otherwise, as always, thank you for watching Bonhill Geography.